In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a reusable fabric gift bag. This gift bag has a casing for a ribbon and a finished flap at the top, but it's otherwise unlined and makes great wrapping paper that you can use again and again. For the fabric gift bag, there is a chart in the description of how big to cut your fabric. So the longer measurement is the height, and that needs to be cut on the fold. That way we'll get a wider bag. And then you need some ribbon or drawstring for the drawstring part. So the first step is also listed in the measurement is how much to fold down the top. So I'm making the small bag. So my bag is 15 inches tall by 10 inches wide, but it's doubled. So I have a 20-inch piece of fabric, and then my top fold needs to be folded down about 3 inches. So I'm going to use my ruler just to get a good 3-inch measurement. This top fold is designed to kind of be a ruffly top at the top of your bag, and it also lets you put the drawstring. This will also be the casing for the drawstring, but then also you won't see the back of your fabric at the top of the bag. After you've done that, we're going to fold it up and fold under a 1/2 inch. That will give us a clean finish for the inside of the bag. But try not to press that crease you already made while you do this. And then you can flip it back over, and now we have a nice folded edge here. So now fold your bag over and match the raw edges on the side here. We're going to draw in our placement for our buttonholes. So move your ruler over a 1/2 inch to account for the seam allowance here, and then we're going to find the midpoint for our buttonholes. So the midpoint of where our finished bag will be about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's right here. Yeah, okay, so that's about where our midpoint is. And then we want to make sure we're drawing our buttonholes above where our casing is going to be. So the flap on the back hits about right here, and you can see it or feel it. And so we're going to draw buttonholes a 1/2 inch on either side of that mark, about a 1/2 inch up from that bottom flap too. So I'm going to use blue for this. So a 1/2 inch over here and over here. So this, we're going to do 2 buttonholes right there. And if you want to make it a little more stable, slip a little piece of interfacing in here as you make your buttonholes. We don't want the buttonholes to go through the back of the flap. So I'm going to interface the back of this and then create 2 buttonholes here. Open up your buttonholes, and I'm going to show you a little trick for making sure you don't cut through your buttonhole tab. So if you have created your buttonhole and then you go to rip it open and you rip through the bottom tab, you'll have to redo it, and it'll probably mess up your fabric. So to prevent that, put 2 pins at the edges of your buttonhole, and that'll act as a stopper when you open your buttonhole with your seam ripper. When you've sewn that seam allowance, go ahead and either serge or zigzag stitch those edges. You can also use pinking shears to help prevent fraying. And since this is a gift bag and the inside of the bag won't be touched very much, you really don't have to finish those seam allowances if you don't want to. Now our next step is to fold back that little 1/2 inch at the top, press it, and then fold back our flap. Fold our flap back down. And then we're going to sew this flap down and also sew the casing for our ribbon. So get it back to where you had the creases and give it another press to make sure everything's straight. And then we're going to make sure this 1/2 inch is folded down too. Give it a press. So now with the flap still up, we're going to sew the side and the bottom of the bag. We want to keep our creases here, but we are going to sew over those creases that we made, and we can go ahead and fix them later, but just if you can, try to keep those there. Line up the bottom corner of your bag, and we are just going to sew 2 sides, the bottom and pivot, and then all the way from the bottom to the side top here. Use a 1/2 inch seam allowance and just a regular stitch. So now I'm going to flip it back right side out, but I'm going to keep my fabric how I just folded and pressed it, and just you'll want to check. And then we're going to make a casing by sewing over these 2, over the buttonholes, over and under. So I'm actually going to use a marker to draw my lines here. You just want it to be a little bit under the buttonholes and a little bit over. So depending on where your buttonholes ended up, we're just going to do 2 lines. It's going to be about 1.25 inches, about 1 inch or so, depending on how big your buttonholes turned out to be. And then I'm just going to continue those lines onto the back here. And drawing them helps me get a straighter line, but you don't have to do this. Okay, and now I'm just going to go ahead and sew over those 2 lines all the way around. So I'm going to open the bag up and put my sewing presser foot on there and sew all the way around both of those lines. So now we have a casing for our ribbon, and our buttonholes are open, so we can thread this ribbon through. I like to measure just by making sure I'm going to have enough ribbon to go through my whole bag and create a bow. So I'm going to cut it a little bit long, and then I can trim it later if I want to. So if you have a drawstring threader, you can use that for this step to make it easy. If you don't, you can use a safety pin. So just attach a safety pin to your ribbon and thread it through one hole, and then we'll just kind of gather it around and get it all the way to the other opening. And then pull it out this side. And then we have our fabric gift bag all ready to go. So you can pull these, put your gift inside, pull these, and make a bow at the top. If you want to make sure your ribbon doesn't come out, you can tack it to the back just by sewing over the casing here, catching the ribbon underneath. And then there's a few other variations you could do. Once you make a bag, you can figure out how to adjust your flap so you have more of a ruffle at the top or less. And then also, if you don't want to do buttonholes, you can just create your bag without the buttonholes and without the casing, and sew ribbon to the back of the bag right here and just tie it around. So that is how to make a fabric gift bag.